not only Muslim prominent figures taking time for them, but also it's an opportunity for mentorship for them, and then that's how we are going to inspire our future, inshallah. So it's really grateful for your time and energy that you're spending. Not only Muslim prominent figures taking time for them, but also it's an opportunity for mentorship for them, and then that's how we are going to inspire our future, inshallah. So it's for your time and energy that you're spending. Not only Muslim prominent figures taking time for them, but also it's an opportunity for mentorship for them, and then that's how we're going to.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. And we do have teacher Julie here that you did get introduced yesterday as well.
Yes, assalamu alaikum, Sister Julie.
How are you? It's nice to see you again.
A pleasure to see you as well.
Welcome back.
Well, thank you so much. It is good to return after a full night's sleep.
Yeah.
And also, Judge Kasubhai, so for today, we are for your introduction, I'm just going to do a very, very brief, short introduction, because I really want you to actually tell the students about yourself, if that's possible. And then Teacher Julie is again going to moderate with the students and their question. I believe it's going to be a little bit less formal than last night. So we are trying to keep it so that it's a more natural conversation versus more that's all okay with you.
Perfect. It sounds like a wonderful format. I am at your disposal. Again, it looks like I want to double check. My internet keeps saying I have an unstable connection. Am I breaking up at all?
As of right now, you're not. However, I do see that the internet on your screen just goes back and forth a little bit from red to yellow to all good. But as of right now, we see you real well. Okay, you are frozen now.
Okay, I am. Okay, I'm switching to another network, so hopefully this will be more robust.
All right, no worries. We will be starting in about a minute at 2:35 in the interest of time, because really want the students to have all the time with you. So at 2:35 we will begin, and I believe we do have almost all the students. I'm just gonna double check all of this.
Yeah. Juwaria, I just want to greet my beloved Judge Kasubhai. Jum'ah Mubarakah for you. And I will see you later on. What a blessing to have you again. And I will come at the end. I have just a small meeting to finish, and then I will join you later on.
I look forward to seeing you again.
And Juwaria is not only science teacher, she's the director of our science and technology, engineering, and math. Beautiful. And she's also our media literacy instructor. And Juwaria has a PhD from Johns Hopkins. We are really blessed that she made the hijrah, the migration from Virginia to the West Coast. And then Sister Julie, she's a PhD and from Portland State in education. And she's our language art and speech and debate, and as well as social studies teacher.
I look forward to the day I can visit in person and see this amazing faculty and students working together. This
and we're looking forward that you are in Portland, and hopefully one day you're gonna teach a law class here.
Yeah.
Consider it done. It would be an honor.
Inshallah. I'll see you later on, inshallah, Judge. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And so with that, it is 2:35. So we will begin, inshallah.
Okay.
All right. So, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome, Judge Kasubhai, and to Oregon Islamic Academy's high school students meeting with high school students. My name is Dr. Javeria Sayed, and I am one of the instructors at Oregon Islamic Academy. Along with me today is Dr. Julie Ahmed, the language arts and social studies teacher at Oregon Islamic Academy. We welcome you to our school virtually, inshallah, one day in person soon. And for the students who do not know much about Judge Kasubhai, Judge Kasubhai is the very first Muslim federal judge in the United States. And Judge Kasubhai is a U.S. magistrate judge in the U.S. District Court of the District of Oregon in Eugene. And Judge Kasubhai also attended OSU, Oregon State University.
University of Oregon. It was Brother Wajdi who went to OSU and who was giving us a hard time about being Oregon Ducks, Sister Anila and me.
And okay, so. Well, I apologize. Well, here you go. And
no offense taken at all, but I think Brother Wajdi put you up to saying that.
Teacher Joeri, those are fighting words there.
Coming from non-Oregon person, I actually don't understand the ducks and the beavers. I just think that they're the ones that are building the dams and like swimming in the lake all around Oregon. So I'm not so very sure about if there's a real rivalry or is it just like animals? That's it. So, but welcome.
You know, yeah, thanks. I do have a theory though. I think it's a function of both schools' inferiority complex because of the mascots that were chosen. I think if it were the University of Oregon Tigers and perhaps the Oregon State Wolverines, I think we'd leave each other alone.
Oh, okay, but yeah, because those don't exist really. Oh, Wolverines.
They don't, you're right.
Well, welcome, Judge Kasubhai, and this floor is all yours.
Well, thank you all very much. I think what I might do is, I know several of you were in the room last night, and some of you were not. So first I want to encourage questions, and I might just start very briefly with how I worked, what happened with me and how I ended up in law school and became a judge. But then really I'd like to turn it over to questions. So many of you asked some amazingly wonderful questions and some of the toughest questions I've ever had. And so I welcome it again today, and I hope that we can have as a vibrant and lively a conversation, or if not more than we did even yesterday. So my family immigrated from India back in the 1960s. My father first came out for school, and then my mother and my older brother followed after, and they settled in New York, but then found work in Southern California, and that's where they settled, and that's where my father still lives now. My mother passed away in 1997. I was born in 1970, so I know you're doing the math, and I'll make it easy for you. I'm 51 years old. So I grew up in Southern California, where the community that my family had grown up in India, there were only a few families that had come out at that same time. And so there were just a few families that lived within maybe an hour of each other. We didn't live quite close at all. But I grew up with almost every Saturday, the families getting together and a few of the children still being able to run around and play. And then growing up in that community and learning our traditions and our faith, and then just for the most part, growing up a relatively quiet life in Southern Oregon, Southern California. And when I was 18, I went to school at University of California at Berkeley. And was able to really dive so much more deeply into just a breadth of diversity, people from all very many different backgrounds on campus, and that was just an amazing place in which I began to appreciate the beautiful differences that we all bring to the table, and also to explore what it means to have conversations with people who have those different experiences. And how I can bring my own experiences to those conversations as well. I graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration, thinking that I would do something with business, but there was also another aspect. So I think early on, I was always interested in social justice. I know we talked about that last night. And I thought that if I could learn the language of business, then I could also find ways to navigate around it or through it or use it to the advantage of social justice issues. I think if I were to do it differently, though, I would have just studied the things that I really loved in undergraduate, and then pursued other higher education after that. But I also thought that business would be a good thing, and I think it would probably make my parents happy at the time. But then I needed some. I didn't know what I was going to do after undergraduate work. I knew that I wanted to do something at a graduate level, but I took a year off, and I went to the East Coast to teach 5th and 6th graders in outdoor environmental education. So it was a sort of a private organization called Nature's Classroom. It was based in Connecticut, and children from the city would come out for a week and spend a week with us, and we would explore nature and work through science and biology and physics and do interesting experiments and just engage with nature, which was an amazing experience. And I did that for 1 year. I ended up after that coming to Oregon, to Eugene, Oregon for law school, and I've been here ever since. Now, law school was interesting, an interesting choice in that I came to law school for probably the same reason I thought I was going to study business in undergraduate. I was still interested in social justice work, and I thought I should learn the language of those who exercise power so I can speak that language and work around it or work through it or work with changing it. And in many ways, I think that is more true about studying law than it was about studying business. And then in the course of my work after undergraduate, after law school, I also had to look for some work to help just simply live. And I was lucky enough to find litigation work, trial work representing injured workers. When people are injured on the job, there's a system called workers' compensation law that allows injured workers benefits if they get injured on the job. Interestingly enough, many employers and insurance companies deny benefits to injured workers, and so attorneys like myself would represent injured workers to help secure those if possible. I also represented people who were injured in other kinds of accidents, whether it be auto accidents or products liability, if a product or something that they were using was designed improperly. There's a space in which you can litigate cases to secure compensation for either the medical bills and pain and suffering. I did that for several years. But I also found that at the probably in 6 or 7 years into that experience, while it was important work, it wasn't something that gave me a depth of fulfillment, in large part because I didn't think I was changing anything. I was helping individuals, and that was really important, and I'm glad I was doing that. But I also felt like I came into the law thinking I wanted to change the world. and make it a better place, and what happened with the idea of social justice. Now, representing injured workers and representing people that were injured because of poorly either bad accidents or poorly designed products is a form of social justice, but it didn't, for whatever reason, it wasn't that which made my heart beat more calmly, and I had to make a decision about what to do. I left private practice, and at that moment, alhamdulillah, that I found that oftentimes when I let go of something that I've been holding on very tightly, other opportunities present themselves. Maybe they were always there, I just didn't see them, or maybe at the time of letting go, those opportunities become available to us. And it was at that moment that the governor of Oregon appointed me to serve on what's called the Oregon Workers' Compensation Board, which is an appeals body. It's like an appeals court for injured workers cases. And from there, I became a judge. 4 years later, the governor at the time appointed me to serve here in Lane County, Oregon, here in Eugene. And I was on the state court bench for 11 or 12 years. And then in 2018, I came to the federal court. And we talked quite a bit about, I think, the role of courts, or my thought about courts yesterday. I think and for those who weren't here last night, maybe in a nutshell, I'd offer that what I find, I think I've found my vocation. I think I've found my calling. The ability to help bring peace to people's disputes, to resolve them in some way that creates rather than destroys our human conditions, is something that I find I can do as a judge, and being able to do it well that way is something that has been very fulfilling to me. It's incredibly challenging work, both with the exercise of patience when people aren't coming to me when they people are coming to the courts probably in the worst times in their lives, some of the most difficult times in their lives. And so they're probably not thinking about the best way to present themselves. And so judges have to exercise patience and take time to listen, to think about how the law would apply in their case, and also look for a decision that is human and compassionate and just under the law that we have in Oregon. And so there's both an intellectual part of it and a heart part of it. And anyone who tells you that the heart doesn't belong in the courtroom shouldn't be in the courtroom. So, so that was the work of both of the state court, and now here in federal court, I get to do the same thing, but with different law. Most of quite a bit of the work that I do in federal court involves employment discrimination, race discrimination, discrimination even in educational institutions, disability discrimination, contract and complex business relationship disputes, patent and trademark disputes. So the range of the law that I get to work in with the federal court is incredibly wide, and so I think I'm stretching my brain more than I ever have before, and it's exciting to be a part of this court system. I think how about if I stop there, Sister Joera, and if there are questions, or if there's something else that you would like me to talk about, I can do that first.
So much more. Thank you so much, Judge Kasubhai, for sharing this. Before I hand it over to teacher Dr. Julie Ahmed, I do want to know and learn more about your. You did say that you went into business as a source for social justice, and that's why you studied, because you thought that would be a way in. What can you elaborate a little bit more on that, please? How did you go from there to going to the law school? And I'm actually also much interested about that outdoor school that you had as well, but that's another story.
Maybe an outdoor school for MET.
Yes.
I'll have to pull up the syllabus and I'll send it to you if I can find the programs that were used.
And teach that as well.
Perfect. So I think I was wrong about studying business as a language to help me work through social justice. Maybe wrong is too strong of a word. I don't know if it would have helped me as much as I had hoped. But I think with our personalities, all approaching the choices that we make, I think my personality might be well, is flawed. it is flawed in the way that I'm always trying to understand the opposition. And so in a way, if you think about it, maybe there in sort of a deeper way, I'm always expecting somebody to oppose me or to be against me. And so I don't want to freak everybody out about having to psychoanalyze me, but now that you're asking me this question, I mean, when I think about it, it's been about trying to study, the opposing counsel, the opposition to the change that I want to make. And so studying business was a way to help me understand what the opposition to social justice might do. Because there was a presumption that business would be opposed to social justice issues. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I don't think it's necessarily not true either. Business, it may or may not have a conscience depending on who's operating it. But I also thought it would be a source of empowerment too, because to have our own financial independence is also a way through which we could achieve certain kinds of social justice too. And I think the same thing occurred with me for the law. And I think it was more accurate to think of understanding the language of the law in terms of being able to access the courts to be able to affect change. But it was also by having a law degree, I also felt that it would give me credibility when I moved on social justice issues or tried to convince other people to help make change, because supposedly lawyers can move that more. And that's partly true, but I think it depends on being a good lawyer as well. Not just having the JD, the initials of a degree after your name. And so, at least with the law degree, what I have found is that you can access the courts in a way that nobody else can as a lawyer, and that can move social justice issues in certain ways, but not in every way. There are changes that the law is not capable of making as immediately and as necessarily as sometimes as the social circumstances might require. But also, I think historically, the law degree has also been a path towards elected office.
I really just want to emphasize one point that you just mentioned right now, that change is not always, it's not always immediate, what you just said right now. And I had a talk with students earlier today when we were talking about change, that sometimes it does take time for it to, and sometimes some change cannot be immediate as well as, so if you didn't believe me, students, believe Judge Kasubhai, that it takes time for change to take place. But I really wish, I don't speak from any great depth of expertise, but if we study the history of Prophet Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the change that it took and the years in order to create the ummah is I think an amazing lesson in both patience and perseverance and determination. Exactly. Very, very true. And this is one of the aspects that, now that you said it, it just, you're absolutely right. Change, it does. So without, I don't want to just hijack this conversation. So Teacher Julie, the floor is yours now.
Thank you, Teacher Juwaria. Assalamu alaikum, Judge Kasubhai, and welcome back again. We really enjoyed your presentation last night. I talked with some of our high school students this morning, and they're still thinking about a lot of the things that you mentioned last night. And so we're really looking forward to today's presentation. They have some new questions for you, and there's some new students. Some were not able to attend last night's presentation, and so we'll let some new students ask some questions. And then after they ask you a few questions, then we can open it up to the rest of the high school groups that didn't necessarily have questions prepared ahead of time. I just want to remind high school students to remain visible throughout this presentation. Also, the part that you mentioned about the opposition, our high school students are engaged in a debate this term, and so I encourage high school students to ask questions about how to deal with the opposition, since that's what their debate surrounds. So with that, I will ask Fadel. He's in 10th grade. To ask your question. Fadel, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Teacher Lisa. Assalamu alaikum. Judge Kasubhai. My name is Fadel Barhoum. I'm a sophomore here at Oregon Islamic Academy. And my question was for some of us wanting to go in the legal field and other students wanting to go into the legal field, what advice would you give for us and the challenges that are awaiting in the legal field and the progress that it takes to get there? And what challenges did you go through when
Fadel, I don't know about everyone else, but I didn't hear the last part of your question. Is that true for everyone else? Okay, so Fadel, would you mind repeating the last part of your question, because you froze there toward the end?
Yeah. So what challenges also did you, Judge Kasubhai, go through when becoming a judge, a Muslim judge in the state of Oregon, and also a federal judge?
Starting with what can you do to prepare yourself for law school and law studies? It always helps if you know that's what you want to do early on. But I'd also encourage you in your undergraduate studies, if you're not already in a determined and focused area of study, to try to get as broad an education as possible. If you're interested in going to law school, having I think a broad liberal arts education can be very helpful, because part of being able to be a good lawyer is also understanding history, political science, the way in which our government is structured, even sociology. So if find a subject that you are really passionate about in undergraduate studies, and learn everything you can about the subject. That I think is probably the most important thing that you can do to set yourself up for law school. Now, the other thing in preparation for becoming a lawyer and going to law school is that you should really commit yourself to developing your writing skills. And I know we talked about this yesterday in the context of social justice, in the context of just our humanity, context of our own tradition. Writing, in my mind, is sacred, and to do for some people it might come naturally. For me, it didn't. I had to work at it, and I think most people who write well are really good editors of their own writing, more than simply somebody who could produce a complete paper in one sitting in one draft. So writing is absolutely essential to being a good lawyer. Even if you become a litigator in the courtroom, you still have to be able to write motions and write briefs to explain the legal issues to the judge, write letters to opposing counsel, write letters to your own counsel. Writing is like breathing when you're a lawyer. So don't take it for granted. And if you think you write well now, beautiful, but you can improve. I think if you talk to any writer who might be considered a good writer, you can confirm that they are a thoughtful and deep thinking writer if they also admit that writing isn't easy, and writing is really the act of rewriting. So that's the kind of commitment and dedication that you should try to create for yourself when it comes to the written word and your role in that written word. So whatever you do in undergraduate, do it with a commitment to learning how to write and write about that subject. Because writing will be necessary in law school. Writing will be necessary in all of your jobs as a lawyer going after that. And certainly, in order to get into law school, or at least to have the flexibility or choice to go to the kinds of law schools that you would like to go to, think about your grades too. At least in this day and age, grades are still very important, and grades are a reflection of the amount of knowledge that you've gained in school. And so those grades will be important in determining whether you can get into the school that you'd like to go to. I would also, I mean, and Sister Anila last night, she went to Harvard Law School, which is wonderful, an amazing accomplishment. And I have no doubt she worked incredibly hard in undergraduate and even before in order to get to the University of Oregon. To earn that right to go to school, and then to earn the right to go to Harvard Law School. And if you can get to a school and if you're interested in going to Harvard Law School, then there's lots of work to be done. But I would also offer this: don't think that you cannot succeed if you end up at the University of Oregon School of Law. I graduated from there, and that means there's a place for all of us. And I think Sister Julie, if I'm not mistaken, you quoted Hamilton last night when you said that the world is wide enough for all of us. So I'm calling you out as a secret Hamilton musical aficionado. But it's true. There is a place for all of us. Whether you go to a regional law school here in the Pacific Northwest, or you go to an Ivy League, or you go anywhere, once you become a lawyer, you will be able to practice the law that you want to practice when you get that degree. And I think that's important to think about too. Now, as a judge, maybe what I can do, the problem with me is that I'll keep on talking and I might not stop. So I know you asked a question about the challenges as a judge, but maybe I should stop now. And if there's time, I can come back to that part of the question and let somebody else ask another question. Thanks, Valo.
Okay, thank you, Judge, for your answer. I wanted to just ask a real brief follow-up question about writing and what opportunities students might have once they leave high school, get into college, and do a little publishing as a student. I noticed in your background, you wrote and published as a student in college, if I'm not mistaken.
I wrote mostly in in law school. And so not as much. I don't recall. Yeah, it was in law school where I wrote. So get involved in student papers, as student publications, and it doesn't have to be the. I mean, if you're interested in journalism, then get involved in the college newspaper. But there are so many other creative journals and opportunities to write in sort of these niche spaces, that if you find a place that speaks to you, or find a subject area that speaks to you, whether it be poetry, whether it be fiction, creative writing, or natural history, science writing, whatever it might be, find some place to write and then work on it. And here, one last thing. Well, actually, I can never do one last thing. Another thing about writing is get comfortable with sharing your drafts with somebody you trust who can edit your work, and you will take their feedback. Every time I do this all the time, and every time I share something I've written with somebody I trust who thinks about writing, also is committed to writing, I get feedback from them about things that I didn't see, that didn't make sense to somebody who hasn't read my work, or who wasn't writing the work. So when it gives me some objectivity to have somebody who cares enough to write up everything on my work and tear it apart to help me make it better. That's important too. So sometimes it can be very self-conscious. I agree with you, especially if it's a personal written piece. But that's why you find people that you can trust, a community of your people to share with these ideas, so they can help you make them better. And then find those places in college to write. And in law school, sort of on that social justice interest that I went towards, I ended up both being a contributing writer and then the editor-in-chief of the Oregon Law's weekly student magazine called The Weekly Dissent. The title says it all. I think we were irreverent, and we were always trying to poke the bear.
Thank you, Judge, and thank you, Fadl, for those good questions. All right, so Amina Zakarne is next. She's in 9th grade. Amina, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum. As Teacher Julie said, my name is Amina Zakarne. I'm a freshman at OIA. And the questions that I have for you are, what do you perceive are the biggest challenges for our society here in Oregon? And what advice could you give to us citizens who want to help address those challenges?
That's a really big question. I will try to answer only a couple small parts of it. And one is the need for civic engagement with people who are committed to helping ensure the strength of our government. And when I say strength of government, I mean strength of government by people being involved and actively engaged in keeping government accountable and also being part of government. I think that's a problem across the country, for that matter, too. And I think if you watch either the news or read about our political structures, oftentimes, and so too many times, I think political office is occupied by people who are the loudest, or perhaps the biggest bully, and it's frightening to think that people like that can get the vote. And also, I think it's because good people don't want to run for office in an environment where humiliation is honored and valued, and so it's hard to get into public service because of that. So I think the biggest challenge, if maybe getting to the question that you had asked, the biggest challenge is finding both finding the people and the courage to stay in the heat of the public eye long enough to be able to serve, and then being able to serve with honor and integrity. Now that's one general issue, and so I encourage everybody to be involved in government in some way, and it can be as a lawyer, it can be as a public servant of any kind in the broad range of what government is available to you. It could be as a public official elected, it can be as a judge. I think there are places in which we can do justice and do right and do good and do things with caring and compassion in government still. So that's a broad issue. And then I think on two other issues, I would say, one, we need to make sure that the judiciary, that the courts are independent. Right now, and for the last several years, they've been I think attacked by political interests and tried to be turned into a political arm of decision making. And I think that's dangerous, because the three branches of our government have to remain independent in order to be a check and balance to each other. To that end, jury trials are absolutely critical to ensure our democratic processes remain intact. To have juries bear witness to what goes on inside of our courtrooms and trials, and then to make the decision about what should happen in a case, is part of our all of our duty as citizens in this country. It should not be handed off to somebody else to do. But when you get the opportunity to serve in a jury, don't look to run from it, but embrace it as part of our responsibility. And then finally, the Voting Rights Act has been slowly chipped away. And if you get a chance to either watch some documentaries or read some books about the late Representative John Lewis from Georgia and his work in the civil rights movement on helping bring about the Voting Rights Act, it's empowering to know what people had to do to fight for the right to access the vote. Something that I took for granted for all of my life before I frankly became a public servant, before I understood the history of the civil rights movement and the violations of human rights associated with keeping people from voting and the work that had to be done to get the vote. And now, in the last several years, and frankly, as we see now with states passing very restrictive voting requirements, it's sliding away from us. And so we have to defend the right to vote. That's something that I think, and what I'm encouraged about is in Oregon, there is a very strong commitment to the right to vote. But that doesn't mean we should become too lax, and we should be constantly vigilant about that. And then if you end up in another state after you go to school, then make sure that you stay engaged on those issues. It doesn't sound like an exciting topic, voting, but I mean, I admit, on its face, it happens once every couple of years. So what? But oh my gosh, if you were paying attention to the last election, voting is actually it's almost an extreme sport these days. So engage it like our democracy matters and is always on the verge of being threatened if we don't vote or preserve the right to vote.
Thank you, Judge. And thank you, Amina, for that question. So a couple of things come to mind. One is how we take so much for granted, the voting and our jury system. We just take this for granted, but especially I think recently we have been reminded how fragile all of that is and how much we have to fight for that. It's not just a given. So thank you, Judge, and thank you, Amina. Raghib, are you there? Raghib Haq has a question for you.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Raghib and I'm a junior at the Oregon Islamic Academy. And my question is, how does your background and your experiences as a Muslim American affect and shape your perception and perspective and interpretation of American law and the legal system in America?
I know we could end up talking a very long time about that subject, and so I appreciate that very thoughtful question. Maybe I'll refer back to perhaps some of my answers from yesterday as well, and my faith, my iman, informs a space where justice is important. And finding a way to strike balance in people's lives and in the disputes that they have is something that has been informed by our traditions in the way that I understand them and believe in them. And so I have found a great deal of strength and confidence with the belief that humility is at the core of both my practice and also my work as a judge. And I know I don't want to. I feel like I don't want to end up repeating so many of the things that I said before. but maybe it bears a bit of repetition here, is that so much of my study of the Sunnah, it turns on the idea of humility and its importance in our faith practice, but it's also so central to being able to work as a judge. And especially because as judges, we have a lot of power and authority to do harm. And we have to choose how we treat people in a way that keeps their dignity intact. It's a very general answer, but I think we could end up having quite a few more specific examples. And if you had a particular example that you wanted me to talk about, I could. But to summarize, what Islam has taught me is to practice humility in everything that I do. And that doesn't mean that I succeed, and I fail. I think, as I mentioned yesterday, I fail quite a bit. But what I try to do is to make sure that humility is something that I can bring about in my work as a judge. There's a surah that really speaks to this for me, Surah An-Nasr, and very loosely translated, very loosely translated, is that when you have declared victory, or you have prevailed, that is when you pray for forgiveness. And again, a very loose translation. So, but that's in a nutshell what it says, and how I think on it on occasion. And that it's an interesting notion that when you can declare victory, and that the first thing you should do is to pray for forgiveness. That is what that tells me is that power is a dangerous thing to have, and Allah Ta'ala says it is at that moment that you should be praying for forgiveness, because perhaps having it in and of itself is a harm and a danger for which we have to be very careful with wielding over other people. And what that speaks to is, and perhaps the defense against power corrupting, is humility. And the idea of praying for forgiveness in and of itself is the act of an action in humility in itself. And so, I think I could probably keep yapping away, but so if there's a connection, maybe just one connection that I share with you is that Surah An-Nasr, and what I think of about having power as a judge, having authority over other people's lives, that the first thing that we should do is pray for forgiveness when you have that power. And I think that's also the role of that should be what that is the role of a judge. No, let me say no. That is the character a judge should carry when doing our work.
Thank you, Judge, and thank you, Raghib, for that question. I think that we have 10 more minutes, if I'm not mistaken, Teacher Juwaria, and I would like to open it up to the rest of the high school students who may have some questions for you, Judge. So I know that Abdullah Al-Sad always has questions in class, and he might have a question right now. I want to ask Abdullah Al-Sad if you have a question. Abdullah, do you happen to have a question right now? And if not, I know other students do.
I don't have one right now.
Okay, that's fine. So, anyone else? Do you have a question? Oh, and Selma, if you don't mind, can you just hold on for just a minute with that? I just want to ask if there's some students who haven't had a chance to ask a question. You asked so many excellent questions last night, and so save it just for a minute toward the end, and we'll ask some new students. Like I see Mohammed and Yusuf. I don't see everyone, Teacher Juaria. I don't see other students at the moment right now, but maybe we can start with Abdul Qadir.
Yes, Mohammed Abdul Qadir, go ahead.
Yeah, hello.
Hello.
Assalamu alaikum. I just wanted to ask, because I know you said the importance of writing, and I think you mentioned that you had published things in like student papers. And I wanted to first ask if you've published like books, and then also how many revisions did you have to go through before the publishing?
I haven't published any books, perhaps someday, but not today. I have ideas about what I'd love to do, but you know, if I could actually write a book, it would be creative writing. It would be nonfiction. Excuse me, it'd be fiction, and that's what I'd aim to try to do when I get the chance. I've published some essays and other other short pieces about the professional world of the law, including pieces on judicial independence. I'm also very committed to the ideals of equity and inclusion with respect to that diversity of identities and groups in our country and in our communities, and how what role I can play and what role lawyers can play in making sure that all people are treated equally and justly and kindly and with humanity. And so those are some of the writings that I've been focusing on. Much of my writing has been addressed to the legal profession and other lawyers and judges, because that tends to be the space in which I feel like I have something I can say and some authority to say it with with some background and experience. And then if you were ever to get a hold of my college writings, some of it's embarrassing only because I think I could write it better now than I did then. But that's also one of the challenges of once you put something into writing, it might last forever these days. So, but it shouldn't stop you. It should encourage you to write it as best as you can now.
Yeah, I tell students, think before you tweet.
Very true. Or don't tweet at all.
Or don't tweet at all. Yes, exactly. I know that Yusuf Ibrahim's hand was up. Yusuf?
Yeah. So, Assalamu alaikum. I'm Yusuf Ibrahim, senior here at Work Islamic Academy. Back in the time of our Khalifa, Umar ibn Khattab, he used to always speak on accountability on himself. He used to say that if there was a mule who tripped over a path, God would hold him accountable for it or anything of the sort. And it also relates to him as a judge towards his people. Now, what I'm coming at is, what is your perspective on accountability as a Muslim judge in the American system? Do you ever feel accountable for any rulings or anything that could possibly change the lives of different people, or just accountability in general as a Muslim in the American court system?
I think very much so. The idea of accountability has to be tied very closely to serving as a judge. It's not a game. The challenge is that sometimes in order to protect yourself psychologically as a judge or mentally as a judge, you have to distance yourself. But there's a danger to distancing yourself as well, because once you distance yourself, you might not feel the compassion that you need to be a good judge. So there's a tension there. And what you raise, I think, is a very important question, and something that I try to be mindful of all of the time. And this was also more so in state court. In state court, I was also responsible for criminal sentencing. So when people were charged with crimes, they would also appear in front of me for me to impose sentences that involve prison. I will tell you that there is not a case that I can recall, nor would I have ever intended to have the experience of satisfaction or joy over sentencing somebody to prison. Or for that matter, there was not an instance in which I did not feel something altogether when I sentenced somebody to prison. And here's what I want to convey with that. When a judge is depriving somebody of their liberty, and I have sentenced people to their entire life in prison, it cannot be taken lightly. And it is my obligation to make sure that I do it with intentionality and with a sense of the gravity of what it is that I've done. Now, does that mean that I go home depressed? Not necessarily. And does it mean that I go home with carrying the weight of the world? Not necessarily. I think if that's what it took to do things with meaning, then I think we would all be broken very quickly. But what we can do is do these things with a sense of duty and service to the greater community. And to do that well, I think as judges, we have to be willing to, I guess, call on maybe a better angel of bearing witness to doing those difficult things, but doing them with a sense of the weight that comes with that work. And maybe I'll contrast that to, there were times in which I would sometimes find other people or other judges perhaps making light of a sentence that was just imposed, and sometimes people do that to try to cope with the difficulty of the case. I think that undercuts our work as judges or diminishes the work of judges. In many ways, judges also have to be witnesses to the things that are difficult in our society, and to do it with dignity, I think we also have to do it with gravity and thought about what it is, how severe it is that we're taking somebody's liberty away.
Thank you, Judge Kasubhai. We would love to have this conversation going on, and I know we're approaching that 1 hour mark that we have set up. I know there are several questions, and I actually do want to ask, this is a question that one of the students and I, and several students and I actually talk about, and it's about how, and maybe Salma will be able to pose it better. It's about how do you, as a Muslim man, a Muslim male, in the position that you are in, serve as an ally to Muslim women, and help us become empowered. And so
that's a wonderful question.
It's a big, a big thing for me and my students. So, and we are always looking for Muslim male allies.
Well, I would first start by setting aside the presumption I know how to be the best ally without first asking you and listening deeply to your answer. And that's what I'd want to do. So I don't mean to turn the question on you at all, but in many ways, it would be incredibly presumptuous of me to know how I can be the best ally possible without hearing your own voice. To the extent that I have tried to be an ally to other women, generally, it has been in my capacity to advocate equity and equitable treatment in the cases that appear before me, the ability for me to make and the authority that I have to ensure that if there are cases involving, for example, sex discrimination cases, that I look very closely at determining if those cases can end up being taken to trial and not simply dismissed outright, because those are oftentimes questions that come up before the court. I also have written with respect to the issue of consent in rape law and sexual assault, and the importance of understanding that consent in the way in which the laws of this country have defined whether somebody can be found responsible for sexual assault has actually deprived or considered that women did not actually have the capacity to consent in the way that other thinking human beings could in that particular context. So writing again is sort of maybe my go-to answer is writing has been a powerful opportunity for me to speak for myself, but also serve as an ally to other people in our community.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge Kasubhai. Brother Weshdi, we are at 2:31 right now, so I don't know if you have more time. We would love to continue this, but I know we all are up against a time crunch. So Brother Weshdi, Teacher Julie.
Judge Kasubhai, I can be biased about you. So we are very thankful for your time, and we will have another 2 more sessions. And we promise all the kids, if they have questions, we'll address it again, inshallah. Do you have 5 minutes, Judge Kasubhai?
Oh, of course, I'd be happy to meet. And if I might also offer to our wonderful teachers and the students, last night I mentioned being able to open up the law school, the courthouse for a field trip. If there's a way we can coordinate that, and I'm sure I can also coordinate that up in the Portland courthouse as well, so you wouldn't have to travel to Eugene. I'd love to be able to make that available. And if there are other times that we can continue this conversation, let me know. I would love to be able to answer more questions and help as a resource.
We're looking forward to visit the Hatfield courthouse when you are in it. We have visited it in the past with our former students. Beautiful. None of our students that are here today had any field trip to the courthouse as a school. Maybe in individual capacity they did, but we visited Judge Malcolm Marsh.
Oh yes.
Times,
wonderful judge.
Yeah, wonderful judge. Yeah. And we will take 1 more questions, maybe just from Salma. Since she raised her hand, Salma, you have the final questions if you want to ask, please.
Well, essentially, I was going to ask what Teacher Joy asked, and I'm glad that she got the chance to ask that. But additionally, I was going to ask as well is how do you plan?
Salma,
we can't hear you, Salma.
We can't hear you anymore.
We can't hear you, Salma. You're muted. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. I was saying is, with all the authority that you have, how do you plan on inspiring and empowering the next generation of leaders? Because so many youth feel as if our voices aren't taken into account and that we're not given a space to speak and express, all that we're going through, especially as we keep being told that we're the future and that we're the future leaders. Like, how do you plan on doing that? How do you do that? Other than coming here, already today, getting to speak to us, which we really appreciate. Thank you.
Such an important question. I'll answer it in 2 ways. One is, given that you've asked me that question directly and personally about what I should do or can do, I'd like to turn that back on you for you to give me the answer. I will not pretend to have these answers, but I'm willing to listen to you and other people, other young people, about what that might mean for you. And so I'd love to have that conversation, because it would help me become a better judge and human being for the remainder of my life. Second, and then I think the last part might be tied to the first part of the answer that I just gave. But it doesn't have any good example. What I'm going to say now is really the theme about what you've asked, but without enough details, because I need to hear them from our youth. I am a firm believer in giving up power. In many ways, the purpose of power is to give it away. If I were to use an example, if I had a candle and you came to, and it was lit, and you came to me with an unlit candle, I do not diminish my flame by lighting yours. It is incumbent on every leader to find ways to give up our power. And we live in the Northwest, Pacific Northwest. Another example. If you've been hiking out in the forest, particularly the old growth forests, have you ever come across these large, long mounds of dirt that could have looked like a tree that had fallen years ago? And on top of that long, large mound, if you look a little closer, it looks like decomposing chunks of trunk. And then if you look closer, or maybe not so much closer, you actually find that there are trees growing out of that long, large mound of that old trunk of a tree. People in power need to become nurse trees as well. I think we have to figure out how to step out of the way to make room for the new canopy to grow up into the forest. Now, those are the theories and those are the themes. That's my imagery that motivates me to figure out how to do it on any given day. But I don't necessarily have all the tools to actually carry it out. You, I hope, can tell me what you would want to see from the people with power to be able to help move over or allow, not allow, but to move over so you can have your authority and agency in time. But you're going to have to work for it. Sometimes it's hard to let go.
I mean, one quick example I could think of, I know we're like short time, is mentorship, because a lot of your story that you told, a lot of us resonate with currently. Can you guys hear me, just to clarify? Hello?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. I just wanted to say that, like, you know, a lot of us right now are going through a lot that, like, you with your story that you talked about of kind of figuring out what path to take, especially with social justice and how to go about that. And you're in a position now where you've already gone through that and you can give a lot of insight to that. So mentorship and kind of having a lot more conversations like this in the future and, you know, just speaking to us is really important.
No, Sister Solma, I would be very honored to continue this conversation. I will leave it to your good teachers to figure out how that can work well with the curriculum and the studies and the schedule. Brother Wajdi knows where to find me, and it would be a privilege and a blessing to sit down and talk with all of you, not as a teacher, but a fellow student, and perhaps maybe even a lesson. They're very rare. Rarely are there teachers, and not to say that all of you are not beautiful teachers, but I don't claim to be a teacher, but I can be a lesson that you can learn something from. And I'd love to be a student to learn from you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Salma. May Allah bless you, inshallah, and reward you and reward all your classmates and your teachers for such a wonderful, engaging, you know, even though I was in a meeting, but I listened to everything. Judge Mustafa, you know, you are one of the most compassionate, powerful, and insightful speaker. You know, we can see the compassionate, you know, voice, and we can see the compassionate justice in you. May Allah bless you and make you better than what we think about you.
MashaAllah.
There is a request. This is for me personally. June 12th is our annual graduation, and we would love you to be one of the keynote speakers. If your time is possible. June the 12th is a Saturday, the second Saturday.
It would be a privilege. Can I check my calendar, and if I can make it, if it's open, I will lock it in and let you know. That would be such an honor. Alhamdulillah.
May Allah bless you. One of our invited keynote speakers is Kat Stephen, Yusuf Islam.
Yusuf Islam will be speaking?
When you mentioned, he didn't give me the final word. We are in touch. And when we started the school in 1997, the trust was founded in 1993. We started as a public forum and discussion, the second Saturday forum, we called it. And then we started the institute for training, cultural competency training. We trained Portland Public School teachers and Beaverton and Tigard and the state. We partnered with the Department of Education. 1997, we started the school. In 1996, I flew to Los Angeles. He was a keynote speaker in the Sirah of the Beloved Prophet, conference. And myself and Sister Gail, may Allah bless her soul, one of our founders, and Brother Yub, may Allah bless him, and reward them all. We met with him and we gave him just the proposal, of our school in 1996. So many people, he said, this guy is busy, he's not going to have time for us to, but he gave us, almost, 1 hour of his time. We listened to us and he asked us several questions. When he went back to London, he sent us a letter with a check of 2,000 sterling pound. He said, never stop from establishing the school.
Mm.
He runs 5 schools in England today. It's called Islamia schools. His waqf, his trust, his endowment runs the schools. Now he's back fully into music. So, and I reached out to him a month ago and he said he will try his best. So I'm following up with him, and hopefully both of you will be our keynote speakers.
I think I might faint first.
Inshallah. Well, I hope Allah will answer, our prayers that both of you will be there with us.
I mean,
I have a dear adopted son, Mustafa Rashid is here in the group. Mustafa has been with us from pre-K to 12. So I want to give him, depart him with love and with the rest of his classmates, I think Mustafa is the only veteran in our senior this year that went from pre-K. Mustafa, can you speak up a little bit? Did you ask a question, Mustafa?
No, I didn't really get the chance.
Okay, Mustafa, this is your chance. You have been here 14 years in our school system. You have a question for the judge?
The main question I was kind of just thinking of is how you kind of draw the line, like before you go to work. How do you prepare yourself mentally to be able to draw the line between being compassionate and having to do your job? Because I know it could be really hard, and I know I don't think I could be able to do that because I'd be too biased. But I was just kind of wondering, how do you mentally prepare yourself before you go into work every day?
Well, I think in some ways, I don't know if I ever stop. I'm not sure I switch or change between the thinking that I might use as a judge, or the feeling, or my notion of compassion that I want to, to bring into my judging anywhere else. I mean, so for me, it's become a very tightly knit sort of way of life. And so I in order from and it also has to be authentic for me and real every day, all of the time. Now I will tell you, I'm not a judge at home. I have no jurisdiction or authority to do anything that I would otherwise do in the courtroom at home. If I tried that, I would be locked up by my kids. And so, but the here's one other thing that I hope I also, maybe in our conversation, that and we've talked about the seriousness of having to sentence people and the presentness and mindfulness of doing it with a full sense of being present. I also think it's very important to be able to laugh. If I didn't laugh, if I took myself too seriously all the time, I think I would become hardened. And so part of what I try to do to be a better human is to find humor in the things that should be humorous, not things that shouldn't be humorous. But laughter is a really important part of opening my heart, and that's that's important for me. If I were to share one last line and thought, and it's again you would think that I listen to a lot of music because I've been quoting a lot of songs in the last couple of days, but it's a very limited library of music. But the last line that I would call on, and again it's from that folk musician from Wales, Martin Joseph. And actually it's written by and it's in a song in which he describes the protagonist of the song as having a soft heart and a tough mind. And I think, when I heard that sort of relationship between the two, it spoke truth to me. And it spoke truth for me in the kind of judge that I want to be. To have a tough mind and a tough heart is a terrible thing. I think it leads to tyranny. To have only a soft heart and no mind also leads to a level of I guess permissiveness or lack of focus or discipline in such a way that the energy isn't channeled in creative ways. But to find a way in which we can strike a soft heart with a tough mind, it becomes a laser focused ability to do some amazingly creative and powerful things. I hope as lawyers, when you become a lawyer, and judges, when you become judges, you always keep your heart soft. You don't ever have to compromise that. You shouldn't. But you can always keep your mind tough and strong and resilient. And that's important to do too. One does not come at the cost of the other. One mustn't come at the cost of the other. Everything I learned from apparently musical lyrics. And of course, Hamilton, because that is my anthem.
Alhamdulillah, may Allah bless you, inshallah. Thanks, Mustafa, for your beautiful, insightful questions. How to start a day. Every day is a new day. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, he said, if your 2 days, yesterday and today, is the same, we are in a great loss. So today has to be better than yesterday, and tomorrow has to be better than today. I'm writing an article with music, Judge Kasubhai. It's called The Tale of Two Countries, The Tale of Yemen and India. How the Yemenis influence India and how the Indian influence Yemen, and especially in the context of Aden, the music is called the Indo-Yemeni music, So inshallah, you'll be maybe one of my critique,
I would love to read it.
Inshallah, I hope to finish it soon. I'm almost done with it. Almost done with it. Judge Kasubhai, Sister Julie, Sister Juwaria, all the students. Sister Marwa is here with us. She's our Quran and Arabic teacher. May Allah bless her. Sister Marwa, wave your hand. She's in the spotlight. So may Allah bless her, inshallah. All of them are great teachers and great students. And inshallah, the narrative will be, again, positive for the American Muslim community to be an added value with the Jewish American, with the Catholics, with the Protestants, and everybody in our public square with people of goodwill to heal and unify not our United States only, but the whole world. Thank you very much, Judge Kasubhai.
Alhamdulillah.
It's been a wonderful treat for our weekend.
It has been such a beautiful gift to be a part of this. Thank you for sharing this with me.
Thanks.
All of you. This has been
Thank you much, my dear. Thanks to all of you that contributed to the great success today. And thanks to Sister Alvera for managing, our technical, in the background and and everybody that participated today. Thank you very much for making it a successful webinars yesterday and today. Thank you very much, Judge. Thanks all. Have a nice weekend. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.